I'm Jean Meserve in Washington. In Paris, France tonight, a tragedy. Britain's Princess Diana has been in an automobile accident. She has been injured.
You won't believe what Princess Diana said in her final phone call just hours before she died. The shocking truth has been hidden for decades. But now the world finally knows her last words. What she revealed will absolutely destroy you. She wasn't scared. She wasn't crying. She was planning something that would have changed everything.
For a long time, I just refused to accept that she was gone. Part of, she would never do this to us, but also part of, maybe this is all part of a plan.
I mean, you really believe that maybe she had just decided to disappear for a time?
For a time, and then that she would call us and we would go and join her.
The person on the other end of that call has stayed silent for decades, but their explosive confession will leave you speechless. What most people don't realize is that Diana made several phone calls that evening, conversations that would later become heartbreaking reminders of what was lost. These weren't distress calls or cries for help. They were the warm, hopeful conversations of someone who believed her best days were still ahead of her. According to police reports and testimony from those who knew her best, Diana spent her final hours reaching out to the people who mattered most to her, sharing her excitement about returning to London and her plans for the future. The first call she made was to her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, who were spending their summer holiday at Balmoral Castle in Scotland with their father, Prince Charles, and the Queen. At 15 and 12 years old, respectively, the boys were more interested in playing with their cousins than having a long conversation with their mother. The call was brief, maybe just a few minutes, filled with the usual chatter between a mother and her children. Years later, both princes would speak openly about how much they regret that final conversation. In a 2017 documentary commemorating the 20th anniversary of their mother's death, Prince William recalled how they were running around, minding our own business, playing with our cousins, and having a very good time. He and Harry were eager to get back to their games, rushing through the call with a quick, "Goodbye, see you later, can I go off?" Prince Harry has been particularly candid about the weight of that memory. He told documentary makers that he can't remember exactly what he said during that last conversation, but what stays with him is how short it was. "If I'd known that was the last time I was going to speak to my mother, the things I would have said to her," he reflected. Looking back at it now, it's incredibly hard. I have to deal with that for the rest of my life, not knowing that it was the last time I'd speak to my mom. Prince William echoed similar feelings, admitting that if he had known what was going to happen, he wouldn't have been so casual about the conversation. "That phone call sticks in my mind quite heavily," he said during the same documentary. For both brothers, this brief exchange represents one of their deepest regrets, a moment they would give anything to do over again. But Diana's evening didn't end with that call to her sons. According to multiple sources and police testimony, she made another phone call that night, this one much longer and more revealing. The recipient was Richard Kay, a royal correspondent for the Daily Mail, who had become one of Diana's closest friends and confidants over the years. Kay has spoken publicly about this conversation, confirming that police told him he was the last person Diana called before her death. The conversation with Kay lasted between 20 and 30 minutes, and it painted a picture of a woman who was genuinely optimistic about her future. Kay later described Diana as being in quite a good place during their talk. She wasn't scared or worried about anything. Instead, she was excited about returning to London the next day and was full of plans for what she wanted to do next. During this final conversation, Diana spoke about her desire to make a fresh start in her life. She was desperate to try and make a fresh start and do something different, to explore a different kind of royalty, Kay revealed in later interviews. Diana had been thinking about how she could use her platform and influence in new ways, particularly focusing on humanitarian work that would make a real difference in the world. One of the projects Diana was most excited about was the possibility of setting up a worldwide network of hospices. According to Kay's testimony at the inquest into Diana's death, Dodi Fayed was prepared to financially support this ambitious project. Diana saw it as a major announcement she could make, something she genuinely wanted to do, rather than something others expected of her. this wasn't just about charity work for the sake of appearances. It was about creating lasting change in how society cared for the dying and their families. Diana also talked about her sons during this conversation. Kay recalled that she was eager to come back and see her boys. Despite the divorce from Prince Charles being finalized just over a year earlier, Diana remained completely devoted to William and Harry. She had been working hard to give them experiences beyond the royal bubble, taking them to homeless shelters, hospitals, and even McDonald's. She wanted them to understand what life was like for ordinary people, believing that real compassion could only come from genuine understanding. During her conversation with Kay, Diana even touched on the possibility of living abroad for a time. She had been considering the idea of spending time in America, feeling that she might have more freedom there to pursue her humanitarian goals without the constant pressure of the British press. However, she also made it clear that any such move would have to work around her responsibilities as a mother. She couldn't simply abandon William and Harry while they were still young and needed her presence in their lives. What makes this conversation particularly significant is what it reveals about Diana's state of mind. This wasn't someone who was fearful or expecting danger. Kay emphasized that Diana sounded happy and hopeful during their talk. She was making plans, discussing future projects, and looking forward to seeing her children again. There was no indication that she sensed anything wrong, or that she had any premonition of what was about to happen. The tone of Diana's final phone call stands in stark contrast to the events that would unfold just hours later. While she was speaking optimistically about the future with Kay, the situation outside the Ritz hotel was becoming increasingly chaotic. Photographers had been following Diana and Dodi throughout their relationship, which had become public knowledge just days earlier, when clear images of them together were published in newspapers around the world. The photographs had shown Diana and Dodi kissing and relaxing together on a yacht in the Mediterranean, finally confirming what many had suspected about their relationship. For Diana, who had spent years under intense media scrutiny during her marriage and divorce, this represented a kind of freedom she hadn't experienced in a long time. She was in love, and for once, she didn't feel the need to hide it. However, this newfound openness came with consequences. The media attention around Diana and Dodi's relationship had intensified significantly, making their every move a potential photo opportunity for aggressive paparazzi. The romantic Paris getaway that was supposed to be a peaceful end to their summer together had turned into a media circus, with photographers camping outside the hotel and following their every movement. It was this pressure that led to the fateful decision Diana and Dodi would make later that night. Rather than leaving through the front entrance of the Ritz, where photographers were waiting, they chose to attempt a secret escape through a back exit. The plan was to slip away quietly in an armored Mercedes, avoiding the media attention that had been following them throughout their stay in Paris. But the paparazzi had anticipated this move. As Diana finished her phone call with Richard Kay, completely unaware of what was about to unfold, photographers were already positioning themselves to capture images of the couple's departure. Within minutes of leaving the hotel, what was supposed to be a quiet drive back to Dodi's apartment would turn into a high-speed chase through the streets of Paris. The woman who had just been laughing with her friend about future plans, who had spoken lovingly about seeing her sons again, who had expressed hope about making a fresh start and exploring a different kind of royal role, was about to become the center of one of the most tragic and controversial events of the 20th century. Her peaceful evening of phone calls and quiet conversation was about to give way to flashing lights, screaming engines, and a collision that would change everything. Looking back at these final conversations, what strikes many people is how normal they were. Diana wasn't making goodbye calls or expressing any sense of foreboding. She was simply a mother checking in with her children, and a friend sharing her hopes and dreams with someone she trusted. These calls reveal a woman who was finally beginning to feel hopeful about her future, who had found love again, and who was excited about the possibilities that lay ahead. The tragedy of what happened next becomes even more profound when we understand that Diana was in such a positive frame of mind during her final hours. She wasn't running from something. She was running toward what she hoped would be a better future. She had plans to make, projects to launch, and children to raise. The conversations she had that night were filled with love, hope, and anticipation for tomorrow, making what would happen in the early hours of August 31st all the more devastating. These phone calls have become an important part of how we remember Diana's final day, not because they predicted what was coming, but because they remind us of who she really was beneath all the public drama and media attention. She was a mother who loved her children deeply, a woman who had found happiness again after difficult years, and someone who genuinely wanted to use her unique position to help others and make the world a better place. While Diana was having those hopeful phone calls on the evening of August 30th, the media attention surrounding her relationship with Dodi Fayed had reached a fever pitch that few could have predicted. What had started as a summer romance between two people seeking happiness had turned into one of the biggest media stories of the decade, with consequences that would prove far more serious than anyone imagined. The relationship between Diana and Dodi had become public knowledge just weeks earlier, when a single photograph changed everything. On August 10, 1997, the Sunday Mirror published what would become one of the most famous paparazzi photographs of all time. Under the headline, "The Kiss," the image showed Diana and Dodi embracing and kissing while aboard the luxury yacht Jonikal in the Mediterranean. The photograph reportedly sold for over $2 million, encouraging the already aggressive paparazzi to become even more relentless in their pursuit. This wasn't just any celebrity romance story. Diana was the most photographed woman in the world, the mother of the future King of England, and someone who had captured global attention during her very public divorce from Prince Charles. Dodi, meanwhile, was the son of Mohammed Al Fayed, the billionaire owner of Harrods department store and the Ritz Hotel in Paris. Their relationship represented something that many found fascinating and others found troubling. The summer of 1997 had been different for Diana. After her divorce from Prince Charles was finalized in August 1996, she had been trying to build a new life for herself. She had recently ended a 2-year relationship with heart surgeon Hasnat Khan and was entering the summer as a single woman when she was romantically linked to Dodi in July 1997. The relationship had begun when Diana accepted an invitation from Mohammed Al Fayed to vacation with her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, at his luxury villa in Saint-Tropez. It was during this holiday that Diana and Dodi reconnected. They had actually met years earlier, in 1986, but it wasn't until the summer vacation that they formed a romantic connection. After the initial trip with her children, Diana returned to spend more time with Dodi privately. According to various accounts, he showered her with expensive gifts and romantic gestures that seemed to sweep her off her feet. However, the relationship was complicated from the start. Dodi had been engaged to American model Kelly Fisher, and they were reportedly supposed to marry on August 9, 1997. When the photographs of Diana and Dodi were published, Fisher learned about his new relationship through the media. Just days before Dodi's death, Fisher's lawyer, Gloria Allred, announced that the model intended to sue Dodi for breach of contract. The media frenzy that followed the publication of those kissing photographs was unlike anything even Diana had experienced before. For 10 days, Diana and Dodi had been traveling around the French and Italian Rivieras on the 63-meter yacht, which had become the center of a tabloid feeding frenzy. Hordes of paparazzi in boats and even helicopters gave chase, hungry for pictures of the couple. This level of attention was exhausting and dangerous. The photographers weren't just taking pictures from a distance. They were actively pursuing the couple wherever they went. Every movement, every meal, every moment of supposed privacy became a potential photo opportunity worth thousands or even millions of dollars to the publications that would buy them. By August 30th, when Diana was making her final phone calls, the situation had become unsustainable. Diana and Dodi had flown from Sardinia to Paris that afternoon, planning what should have been a quiet end to their summer together before Diana returned to London to see her sons. She was due back in London on August 31st, where Prince William and Prince Harry were returning from their summer holiday at Balmoral Castle. The couple arrived at the Ritz Hotel around 4:30 in the afternoon, and the hotel surveillance cameras recorded them walking through the lobby. Even then, paparazzi were stationed outside the hotel, waiting for any opportunity to capture images of the couple. The Ritz, owned by Dodi's father, should have been a safe haven, but even there they couldn't escape the intense media attention. During their time at the hotel, Dodi had an important mission to complete. He slipped out to visit the Rapazzi jewelry store near the hotel to pick up a ring that would later be described as an engagement ring. The ring reportedly cost around $200,000 and had been chosen by the couple during an earlier visit to Monaco. Whether Dodi actually intended to propose that night remains a matter of speculation, but the ring would become a central part of the story that followed. Diana and Dodi had originally planned to have dinner at a restaurant called Chez Benoit, a casual bistro in the Marais district of Paris. It should have been a simple, romantic evening out. However, Dodi made the unusual decision not to inform his bodyguards where they were going to dinner, which meant no security planning could be carried out. This would prove to be one of several critical decisions that night. The couple left the Ritz around 7 p.m. and drove to Dodi's apartment, still followed by paparazzi. The building was located on Rue Arsène Housset, just off the famous Champs-Élysées, and photographers were waiting there as well. Diana had some of her belongings at the apartment, and Dodi had prepared romantic surprises for her there, including the ring and what was described as a love poem inscribed on a silver plaque that he had placed under her pillow. When they set out for dinner later that evening, Diana wore white jeans, a sleeveless top, and a black blazer, along with a pearl bracelet that Dodi had given her. As 15 paparazzi on motorcycles swarmed their Mercedes, the situation quickly became dangerous. Dodi shouted, "It's too much, it's mad," and told his driver to head back to the Ritz. The photographers surrounded them on all sides, in front, behind, and alongside their car. Some were scouts, racing ahead to find out where the couple was going. This aggressive pursuit was what really made Dodi nervous, and he decided they should return to his father's hotel, where they would be protected from the photographers. Back at the Ritz, Diana and Dodi tried to have dinner in peace, but even inside the hotel they couldn't escape the attention. Other diners in the restaurant began staring at them, making the couple uncomfortable. They decided to retreat to the Imperial Suite to have a private meal. Diana ordered vegetable tempura, while Dodi chose grilled turbot, but the romantic dinner they had hoped for was overshadowed by the chaos outside. The paparazzi situation was spiraling out of control. Hotel security was so concerned about the photographers outside that at 10:05 p.m., night security boss Francois Tendil called Henri Paul, the acting head of security, whose shift had actually ended 3 hours earlier. Paul, who would later be found to have been drinking that evening, returned to the hotel to help deal with the situation. It was at this point that the fateful decision was made. Rather than staying safely in the hotel for the night, Dodi became determined to return to his apartment. There were personal reasons for this choice. Diana had clothes and belongings at the apartment, and Dodi had prepared romantic surprises there that he wanted to share with her. The ring was waiting, along with the love poem he had written. The plan that emerged was Dodi's idea. A decoy operation would be set up to fool the photographers. A chauffeur-driven limousine and a Range Rover would wait at the main entrance on Place Vendôme, while a third car would slip away through the back exit on Rue Cambon. It seemed like a clever way to avoid the media attention that had been following them all day. However, the plan had a critical flaw. When bodyguard Kes Wingfield was explaining the escape route to Henri Paul, he called out loudly in English, "Henri, you will leave from the Rue Cambon." The distance was quite long, and his voice carried to where some of the paparazzi were gathered. A handful of photographers overheard and worked out what was happening. Henri Paul's involvement in driving the couple was another crucial decision. Paul had been drinking that evening, 5 aperitifs on top of prescription drugs that were not supposed to be taken with alcohol. Hotel staff had noticed alcohol on his breath earlier in the day. When hotel manager Thierry Rocher gave Paul the message about the car plan, Paul responded by saying he was going to finish his Ricard, a licorice-flavored alcoholic drink. Despite these warning signs, the plan moved forward. At around 12:20 a.m. on August 31st, Diana and Dodi left the Ritz through the back entrance. Henri Paul drove them in a black Mercedes S280, with bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones in the front passenger seat. Neither Diana nor Dodi was wearing a seatbelt. The decoy cars had successfully drawn most of the paparazzi to the front entrance, but the few photographers who had overheard the plan were waiting. Almost immediately, the paparazzi picked up their trail. As they drove through the streets of Paris toward Dodi's apartment, photographers in cars and on motorcycles pursued them. What should have been a short, quiet drive through the city became a high-speed chase that put everyone involved in serious danger. At approximately 12:25 a.m., the Mercedes entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel at dangerous speeds. The car was traveling at more than 100 kilometers per hour in a tunnel with a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour. In those final moments, neither Diana nor Dodi could have known that the romantic evening they had hoped for, the future plans Diana had been discussing so optimistically just hours earlier, were all about to come to a devastating end. Seconds after entering the tunnel, the car went out of control. It struck the 13th concrete pillar dividing the tunnel, rolled over, and rebounded into the right wall before spinning around. When the car finally stopped, it was facing east, the opposite direction from which it had come. The chase was over, but the real tragedy was just beginning. The woman who had been laughing with her friend Richard Kay about her future plans, who had spoken lovingly about seeing her sons again, who had been excited about starting a new chapter in her life, was now trapped in the wreckage of a car in a Parisian tunnel. The paparazzi who had been pursuing them were among the first to reach the crash site. But instead of helping, some continued taking photographs of the destruction they had helped to cause. When emergency responders arrived at 12:40 a.m., they found that Henri Paul and Dodi had been killed instantly. Diana was still alive but seriously injured. Dr. Frédéric Maillez, who happened to be passing by, was the first medical professional on the scene. He found Diana unconscious, and using a breathing bag, he helped her regain some consciousness, though she couldn't speak. The final phone calls Diana had made that evening now took on a completely different meaning. Her excitement about returning to London, her plans for humanitarian work, her hopes for the future, all of it had been cut short by a series of decisions driven by the need to escape the very media attention that had made her one of the most famous people in the world. The peaceful evening of phone calls had given way to a nightmare that would shock the world and raise questions that continue to this day. As Diana was rushed to the hospital in the early hours of August 31st, the world was about to wake up to news that would change everything. The woman who had sounded so hopeful and happy in her final conversations was fighting for her life, and the romantic summer that had brought her so much joy was ending in the most tragic way imaginable. When news of the crash reached the world in the early hours of August 31st, 1997, the immediate reaction was one of shock and disbelief. Henri Paul and Dodi Fayed were killed instantly in the collision. Diana was alive but seriously injured, trapped in the wreckage of the twisted Mercedes. Sergeant Xavier Gourmelon, a firefighter among the first responders, later recalled that Diana's final words were, "My God, what's happened?" Around 2 a.m., Diana arrived at Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital, but at approximately 4 a.m., she was pronounced dead. She was 36 years old. The immediate investigation by French authorities seemed straightforward. Henri Paul had alcohol levels more than 3 times the legal limit in France. The car had been traveling at excessive speeds while being pursued by paparazzi. The official conclusion was that this was a tragic accident caused by drunk driving, speed, and aggressive pursuit by photographers. However, almost from the moment the news became public, questions began to emerge. The most vocal champion of alternative theories was Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father and owner of Harrods department store. Al-Fayed refused to accept the official explanation, believing the crash was a deliberate assassination carried out by British intelligence services, acting on behalf of the royal family. Al-Fayed's theory centered on several key claims. He alleged that Diana was pregnant with Dodi's child, and that the couple had been planning to announce their engagement. According to his version of events, this was unacceptable to the royal establishment because they could not tolerate an Egyptian Muslim potentially becoming stepfather to the future King of England. Therefore, he claimed, MI6 had orchestrated the crash to eliminate this threat. The conspiracy theories gained traction partly because of genuine concerns about some aspects of the case. Henri Paul's toxicology results showed not just alcohol but also prescription medications. Some questioned whether blood samples had been properly handled. There were also questions about Paul's financial situation. He had more money in his bank accounts than his salary would justify, leading to speculation that he might have been working as an informant for intelligence services. Another source of suspicion was the mysterious white Fiat Uno that several witnesses claimed to have seen in the tunnel. This small car appeared to have made contact with Diana's Mercedes before disappearing. Despite extensive searches, French investigators were never able to locate this vehicle or identify its driver. For conspiracy theorists, this missing car became crucial evidence, suggesting a more complex plot. Adding fuel to the theories was a letter Diana had written to her butler, Paul Burrell, in 1993. In this letter, Diana had warned that there were plans to tamper with her car, cause brake failure, and ultimately lead to a crash, resulting in a fatal head injury. The letter wasn't made public until 2003, but its existence seemed to suggest that Diana had predicted her own death. The public pressure for answers became so intense that in January 2004, British authorities launched their own investigation, Operation Paget, led by Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir John Stevens. The investigation was legally necessary because allegations were being made about crimes that might have taken place on British soil. Operation Paget was one of the most extensive investigations in British police history. It took nearly 3 years to complete and cost over £12 million. A team of 14 experienced police officers examined every conspiracy theory that had emerged since the crash. They looked into 175 separate allegations, interviewed more than 300 witnesses, and produced an 832-page report addressing every major conspiracy theory. The investigation examined claims about MI6 involvement, royal family conspiracies, Henri Paul's alleged intelligence connections, the missing white Fiat, and Diana's supposed pregnancy. They had access to classified documents, conducted scientific tests, and examined Diana's stomach contents and blood samples to determine if she had been pregnant. The conclusions of Operation Paget were unambiguous. The investigation found no credible evidence to support any major conspiracy theories. Diana was not pregnant. Multiple medical examinations confirmed this. There was no evidence of an engagement between Diana and Dodi beyond the purchase of a ring. Henri Paul had indeed been drinking that night. And while he may have had minor connections to French intelligence services, there was no evidence he was acting under orders. The report confirmed that the crash resulted from Henri Paul's impaired driving, excessive speed, and pressure from pursuing paparazzi. The investigation found that the seatbelts in the car were in perfect working order. Diana and Dodi simply weren't wearing them. In 2007, a formal coroner's inquest examined all the evidence gathered by Operation Paget. This inquest lasted 6 months and heard testimony from over 250 witnesses. In April 2008, the jury delivered its verdict. Diana and Dodi had been unlawfully killed due to the grossly negligent driving of both Henri Paul and the pursuing paparazzi. However, even this comprehensive investigation failed to satisfy everyone. Mohammed Al-Fayed continued to maintain his conspiracy theories until his death in 2023. Some members of the public remained skeptical, feeling that the full truth had never been revealed. What we know, based on extensive investigation and evidence, is that Diana's death was the result of tragic circumstances, rather than a deliberate plot. The combination of an intoxicated driver, excessive speed, aggressive paparazzi, and failure to wear seatbelts created a perfect storm that led to one of the most shocking deaths of the 20th century. When the 2008 British inquest delivered its final verdict of unlawful killing, it provided legal closure to one of the most scrutinized deaths in modern history. However, the end of the official investigations marked the beginning of a different conversation about Diana's true legacy. Beyond the conspiracy theories and media speculation lay the more important question of what the world had actually lost when Diana died that August night in Paris. Diana's death represented more than just the end of a celebrity's life. She had been using her unique position to champion causes that many people in power preferred to ignore. Her approach to royal duties was revolutionary for its time. She didn't just attend charity events for publicity, she genuinely connected with people who were suffering. When she held the hand of an AIDS patient in the 1980s, at a time when many still feared the disease could be transmitted through casual contact, she was making a powerful statement about human dignity and compassion. Her humanitarian work extended far beyond what was captured in that final phone call to Richard Kay. In the months before her death, Diana had been particularly focused on the global landmine crisis. Her visit to Angola in January 1997 had been a turning point in international awareness of the devastating impact these weapons had on civilian populations. At the time of her visit, Angola had an estimated 9 to 15 million landmines scattered across its terrain from decades of civil war. The images of Diana walking through cleared minefields, wearing protective body armor and meeting with young amputees, had a profound impact on public opinion worldwide. As one of the most recognizable people on the planet, her decision to spotlight this issue brought unprecedented attention to a problem that had been largely ignored by mainstream media. Paul Hannon, executive director of Mines Action Canada, later observed that Diana showed basic humanity to people who don't normally receive such attention, creating a wake-up call for the international community. Her timing proved crucial for the global campaign against landmines. Negotiations were already underway for what would become the Ottawa Mine Ban Treaty, but Diana's advocacy gave the movement powerful momentum. Just 3 months after her death, 122 countries signed the treaty, calling for a comprehensive ban on anti-personnel mines. As Time magazine reported in September 1997, after Diana's death, the treaty took on the character of a humanitarian memorial to Diana and her cause. The treaty's success represented exactly the kind of change Diana had hoped to achieve. By 2025, the Ottawa Treaty had been signed by 164 countries, and the annual number of landmine casualties had been reduced significantly from the epidemic levels of the 1990s. Diana didn't live to see the treaty signed, but many involved in the negotiations believed it would not have been possible without her voice and influence. This pattern of genuine engagement characterized all of Diana's charitable work. When she became patron of Centerpoint, a charity for homeless youth, she didn't just lend her name to the organization. She brought her sons William and Harry to visit, wanting them to understand what life was like for people less fortunate than themselves. She took them to homeless shelters, hospitals, and even McDonald's, believing that real compassion could only come from genuine understanding. Diana's influence on her sons has become one of her most lasting legacies. Both Prince William and Prince Harry have spoken extensively about how their mother shaped their approach to public service and charitable work. The values she instilled in them during their childhood have guided their adult lives and the causes they choose to support. Prince William has focused much of his charitable work on mental health and environmental conservation. Along with his wife Catherine, and initially with Harry, he launched the Heads Together campaign in 2016 to combat the stigma surrounding mental health issues. This unprecedented collaboration between 3 senior royals reflected Diana's belief that the royal family should use their platform to address society's most pressing problems. Prince Harry has perhaps most directly continued his mother's work. His Invictus Games, founded in 2014, provides a platform for wounded military veterans to compete in international sporting events. The Games showcase the physical and mental resilience of service members who have been injured in combat, reflecting Diana's commitment to supporting people who have been overlooked or forgotten by society. Harry has described the Games as a way to honor his mother's memory and continue her work with vulnerable populations. Harry has also literally followed in Diana's footsteps by returning to Angola to continue the landmine clearance work she began. In 2019, he walked through the same area where his mother had been photographed in 1997, which had since been cleared and turned into a thriving community with housing, schools, and businesses. His ongoing support for the Halo Trust, the organization that hosted Diana's original visit, demonstrates how her brief involvement in the landmine campaign created lasting change. Beyond the specific causes she championed, Diana's greatest legacy may be the way she redefined what it meant to be a public figure. She showed that celebrity and influence could be used for genuine good, rather than just personal advancement. Her willingness to tackle controversial subjects like AIDS, homelessness, and landmines proved that public figures could make a real difference when they chose to engage with difficult issues. Diana's impact extended beyond her charitable work to influence how we think about mental health and emotional openness. Her candid 1995 BBC interview, where she discussed her struggles with bulimia and postnatal depression, was groundbreaking for its honesty. At a time when mental health issues were rarely discussed publicly, especially by members of the royal family, Diana's willingness to share her own struggles helped reduce stigma and encouraged others to seek help. This legacy of openness about mental health continues through her son's work. Harry has spoken publicly about seeking therapy to deal with grief over his mother's death, while William has made mental health a central focus of his charitable efforts. Their willingness to discuss these issues reflects the influence of a mother who believed that showing vulnerability could be a source of strength rather than weakness. Looking back at Diana's final phone calls, what strikes many people is how much they revealed about her character. She wasn't calling to say goodbye or express fears about her safety. Instead, she was excitedly making plans for the future, discussing her hopes for humanitarian work, and expressing love for her children. These conversations captured the essence of who Diana was, someone who believed in the possibility of positive change and remained optimistic even in the face of enormous challenges. Today, more than 25 years after her death, Diana's influence continues to be felt around the world. The causes she championed have made significant progress. Her sons carry forward her values in their own charitable work, and her approach to public service has influenced a generation of activists and public figures. Diana's story reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, individual actions can create lasting change. Her brief but impactful involvement in the landmine campaign helped save countless lives. Her openness about mental health helped reduce stigma that had persisted for generations. In the end, Diana's true legacy isn't found in the tragedy of how she died, but in the power of how she lived. She used her unique position to shine light on forgotten problems, to comfort the suffering, and to prove that compassion could be just as influential as power or wealth. That legacy continues to inspire people around the world who believe, as Diana did, that each of us has the power to make a difference in the lives of others.